Good morning and welcome to the AutoTalk weekly wrap / live stream. Is it the weekly wrap or the live stream?
It's a weekly wrap. Good morning.
Anyway, we are here in a flash office.
This is the war room, guys. This is the war room with Croydons. I'm telling you what, the finest photocopy over there that money can buy. Now, yeah. It's a lease.
At least, right? At least, yeah. Anyway, it has been a huge week in news, and we'll get to that moment. We're going to talk first about the most important thing, and that is I put Graham in an electric car for a week.
Yeah, you did. I know. I want to talk about this on the show quickly, or is this one of those that save it up for... No. Okay, so I'll just keep this brief. I'm not a heathen that comes to electric vehicles, and you should know that by now. I may own a Mustang 5-litre GT that chews up baby seals for petrol, but I appreciate a good EV. And we've done some great road trips around the country and some very, very fine automobiles. But what happened this time was the people at MG Motors...
Are we including the Renault Zoe on that list?
Let's just park that one aside to forgotten territory, shall we? Okay, anyway, look, the good people at MG Motors rang up and said, hey, do you think Graham would like to actually experience an MG4 for the week, since it has won the car of the year after all? And so I got to park my bum in an MG4 Essence for a week and use it like ordinary people use vehicles, not like media people, Richard, not, 0 to 100s and not, suspension tweaks, just doing the shopping and taking the kids to school and all that sort of stuff. And it was really interesting because there are some shortcomings, but how I view vehicles is I don't care whether it's an EV or a PHEV or it's powered by hydrogen. I want to see what it's like in real world, everyday West Auckland circumstances. Would I buy one? Would my wife buy one? Would my friends buy one? And it was a really interesting experience. But I say, I did experience range anxiety. And we had one little moment in the wild depths of Waiuku, Pukekohe. And am I across the line yet? No, I'm not.
Graham had an issue that would come down to a combination of he has no charging at home yet. Maybe one day I'll get them to put a charger in so I can visit. And someone, I think it was a van. I'm going to blame a diesel van.
Yeah.
Bowl over the Waiuku charger.
This is Waiuku,
and it's I believe a bit of a wait for the new one. And so he did have to make a short trip over to Pukekohe to charge. Once you were there, the charging went fine. It wasn't a long stop.
No, it was 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
It wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But as a car, you know what? It was actually bloody good. It was a really good everyday car. Like if I was buying a Corolla hatchback, or I was buying a Mazda 3 hatchback, or I was buying an MG4 hatchback, 5-door hatchback, $50,000 or so with a rebate. Buy a good 5-door hatchback these days. Was it a good car? I thought it wasn't a bad effort. Really, really impressed.
And I'm going to try and I'm upgrading on this. So today I'm going to put you into a BYD Seal. Which a performance one, so 0 to 103.8 seconds, range, depending on how you use it, somewhere between 400 and 500 kilometers.
So 300 then.
Ooh, if you go and do 0 to 103.8 seconds repeatedly.
No,
that's so we'll see how you go with that. We'll talk about that next week. We're slowly converting it. But anyway, joining us today. And I don't know, maybe semi-converted to EVs in some ways. I know he can't tow his caravan home yet. Is David Crawford? Did you get a chance to drive the MG4 while you were still at the MIA?
No, I didn't. And hi, how's it going?
Good. Yeah. But maybe if someone from MG is listening, you could get a drive too.
You get a drive. It's a drive.
I did drive quite a few different EVs, so it's not unfamiliar territory for me, and I do like them. But once we've got 10,000 chargers around the country, I think it'll be a better deal.
Yes.
There's shortcoming. There's the big shortcoming.
If we're talking about National's plan to put 10,000 chargers, I'm still reserved until I see more details on what their plan is around that. What are those 10,000 chargers and how are they going to do it? Because I have some concerns that it's going to be some money towards some companies that are in there for the buck rather than the actual properly structured charging network. But we will see. We will see.
It better not end up like Phil Twyford's 10,000 state houses a month.
Ooh.
We don't want to make promises we can't keep, right?
Well, I guess we should jump into the news in a minute, and we will get to that because I guess, unlike Mr. Twyford, our new Transport Minister, being a previous Transport Minister, not the most recent because he didn't do the job very well, has actually got some stuff done. We'll get to that in a second. And that actually does lead into my first item here, and that is the new version of AutoTalk magazine is out. Now, we sat on this because and have to keep on updating it because we were waiting for the clean car discount news because we figured we wanted people to have all the details on paper, and eventually it came. Give people some context on how things work behind the scenes. I've been badgering Simeon Brown's press secretary on a more than daily basis. I'd been hassling a couple of PRs within the government sector on pretty much an hourly basis, and they finally gave in and let me know when the announcement was coming and gave it to me early so we could get the details all out and ready to go to people as soon as possible of that announcement. But if you want to read about that, that's an AutoTalk, and we've got a whole pile of other stuff in there. We've got an interview with Steve Pragnall from Twitter New Zealand, who's retiring after 40 years, I think, in the
pretty much
trade.
forever.
Yeah, pretty much forever. He's a bit of a legend straight out of Parney. Probably out of Wellington if he's been with them for 40 years. We look at a few of the stories we're going to cover today. Great all-round magazine. Go download it. It's free on the website. If you want a paper copy, you can pay for a subscription one. A lot of people do. A lot of people pay for that paper copy because they love it. We've got a fairly sizable paid subscriber base there, which we really appreciate. We really appreciate people's support on keeping. Magazines are expensive to do these days, and we appreciate people's support on making sure.
But if you're in the dealership business, as I know a lot of you are, these are the things that are actually really good to have around your staff room table because they're just good, casual pick-up read. Keep your staff up to date with what's actually going on the track. The sort of stuff that you don't necessarily get time to explain to them, but can often make a lot of sense to the whys and wherefore of how your business operates in a wider environment. So, I think having a paper copy around is a really good strategy to keep your team up to date.
Anyway, you can find that on the website. So let's cut to the elephant in the room. That's the wrong one. Oh, where are we? Clean car discount cancelled. The details. So National promised to cancel the clean car discount on December 31. Looks set to come to fruition when we have the details.
It's done.
There's the past tense. Oh, it was signed.
Done.
Went through Parliament yesterday on the fast track. But the Wakatai kind of jumped the gun and released the information prior. Are we calling it Wakatai?
No, we're calling it NZTA. They've already said they're going to change. Get back to NZTA. Yeah. We'll call it what it is.
Yes.
The only thing, I mean, look, to be fair, as a press release, we all knew the scheme was coming to an end. The only thing I think the trade was waiting to see was what happens to the rebate off date.
Yes.
Was it going to be a hard and fast war on the 31st of December before making your application, or would it merely be a case of vehicles that were registered on the 31st and then with a grace period to claim? And that was what we were all
They have gone hard and fast. From my understanding, they are turning off the website.
Yeah,
at 11:59 on December 31st. And if you're not in by then, and if you're not in successfully by then, so if you've done it wrong, then
bad news for you.
Yeah.
And it makes sense as to why. If you sort of look at the mechanism as to whether that's an unfair process or not, they just can't have the hangover of, because there was no limit necessarily. It was a 6-month limit to make claim under the old framework. It just means there's not a hangover period that government effectively has to account for claims yet to be submitted on rebates. And some of them could be quite chunky going forth into the future on vehicles that were sold in December. Nobody's applying for a vehicle that has a fee before that, are they?
No, not at all. So there ain't no money coming any time between now and then.
Nope.
The interesting thing too was in the statement we would through it. People can jump onto AutoTalk and read it, and a lot of you have. That's already one of our most popular stories of the year. They've already cleared the thing and said no exceptions for shipping or compliance.
Yeah,
because always every time stuff like this comes out, there's always someone from VIA or wherever will say, "But what about an exception if there's shipping and compliance issues?" And they said, "No, ain't going to happen."
It was well enough signal. I mean, look, and I was one of those that in previous times, and I have made a case for extending or granting exemptions when there's been genuine concerns around shipping and logistics. But in this case here, it was really well signaled. And I have to say, if you're in the industry right now and you didn't know this was coming and a likelihood and made your buying your buying process accordingly, then you probably are less smarter as a person as I assumed you were going to be. It was well signaled.
Now, to our resident Wellingtonian, David, 2 questions here. One, what NZTA coming out with this kind of very clear guidance statement before the amendment has gone through Parliament, is that rare? Is that a interesting way that they've done it here? They were a day before it actually made it into Parliament.
It's a faux pas on their part, and it should not have happened because it's getting ahead of the ball game. And if something had happened while they were trying to do something under emergency and then it got postponed until next week, there would have been a lot of egg on people's faces. So that's a little bit naughty on their part. The interesting thing, I'll let you ask your second question. I do have a commentary about how they've done it.
Well, the second question from my perspective was, do you think it's good that they've been just incredibly clear around exact timing, exactly what the timing will allow for, and what they've said around no exemptions? Do you think that clarity is useful?
Yes. I think if I had been in an official seat providing advice to Simeon Brown, the 2 options would have been really clear: a hard and fast drop dead 31st, or drop dead for eligibility on the 31st and a grace period of, say, 2 weeks for application, either one or 2. But whichever one was chosen, they need to be very, very clear about what the rules are and get it out there quickly. Otherwise, people could lay claim to legitimately not understanding the process. But in this case, they've made it quick. The other comment that I make, Richard, is that you had asked me about how quick they could do this, and I said, well, no, the regulations are a bit of a hassle. And then I realised, as it was going through the House, I suddenly realised, well, if they repeal the bits of the Act that grant the power to make the regulations, which is what they've done for the clean card discount, then any existing regulations are no longer valid because their statutory warrant has disappeared. So that's what they did. So under emergency, within 1 day, they got rid of the clean car discount, which is a very neat way of doing it.
Yeah, and when we say that in 1 day, it was question time and some other stuff in between. And interestingly, a lot of the debate when I watched, particularly when it got to committee stage, was more about whether this was the right way to do it, whether they were actually repealing the law in the correct way. So yeah, they moved incredibly quickly. Now that has, of course, caused some controversy, not so much around the urgency, but around the fact that the minister, although General National is doing this across a number of things at the moment, has held back a impact statement on the regulation. He says he's going to proactively release it, but interesting to see that. And Drive Electric at the same time, on the same day, I don't know whether they tipped off or whether they just had the timing exactly right, released a study that had been done by some consultants basically providing details around the impact of the regulation. And that was really interesting to see that went out at the same time. And I think some media have perhaps picked that up as being almost like an accurate reflection of what the impact will be. I'm not sure. I mean, it's from a consultant working for a particular lobby group on one side of the argument. But certainly there
I was going to say I can say with a degree of certainty, and I'll probably get told off with this, but it's modelling, and it all depends on the assumptions you make with the models, and you can make a model tell you whatever answer you want. Whether they've done that in this case, I don't know. I haven't read the detail, but it's incredibly difficult in modelling to accurately predict what will happen because it's based on some assumptions. So normally what I do when I'm modelling problems like this is I do a sensitivity analysis of a range of potential outcomes depending on how people respond. But the one thing that we do know from experience in other countries is that when rebates come off hard and fast like this, there's a downward trend on purchasing as people then adjust to the new market, because the marketplace, the rules of how the marketplace operate have changed, and people's behaviour will change. The extent of that change will be told in time. Will unfold with time. What I am predicting is, of course, that there will be quite large sales of low emission vehicles in December, as we've anticipated. And then come January, they'll go through the roof. But I also think that the level of ute sales in the following months, when it levels off, will be higher than what it has been for most of this year. The ute market has been depressed because $7,000, range of $5,000 to $7,000 fee on top of a ute price is not insignificant. So people have been thinking hard about when they do their timing. Well, all of that will disappear, and come March, April, May, I think the market will be in a much more stable place, and there'll be a truer picture of just how much New Zealanders seeking to go away from fossil fuels to electrification, having to face the true cost of purchasing an electrified vehicle.
Yeah, I think the biggest impact on the electric vehicle sales is going to be allowing these companies to actually specify and price these cars as they should naturally be in the market. We've seen vehicles in there that have been priced and specified according to that arbitrary $80,000 limit. It's not led to the best outcomes in some cases. The Volkswagen ID4 is a prime example. Skoda with their version, I can't remember the name, some stuff's been priced under, pushed over in order to meet the need of the system, and that has led to some issues, I think, in vehicles that are actually moving the way they should. And I think the market might head up a little bit up market. I think people have been buying down market because there was free money there. So it could actually be a good thing for premium vehicles.
They were de-speccing vehicles, some models of those vehicles, to get them under the 80k limit, and that probably is not a good outcome. So you're right, Richard. I think what we will see is a truer market reaction to low emission vehicles across a model range, and the pricing adjustments will settle down, and older tech will be discounted as newer tech comes on. So we're starting to get into that part of the electrification process now, where some of the older tech is going to be priced more cheaply than the newer tech, which is what we were seeing in ICE vehicles as a regular feature. You'll have your run out models, etc.
So when the clean car discount came on, miraculously the price of Nissan Leafs jumped up by about
$3,500, and not even overnight, within hours.
Are they going to drop $3,500 in Japan this time?
Yeah, well, I think they will actually get a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of a different set of market factors there as well. And that's primarily supply. So I've maintained for quite some time, New Zealand basically hoovers up as many qualifying EVs as it realistically could, discount scheme or no discount scheme. The market appetite more or less matched ability. If anything, it's probably going to restrict, I think, a little bit maybe the real bottom end Leaf stuff, the Gen 1 higher K poor battery. We see stuff coming in. We see 5 bar, 6 bar battery, 24 kilowatt Leafs coming in, because to do the numbers for those that are here that are uninformed, if you bring a lead in that owes you, say, $6,000 or $5,000 across the water because you bought a 90,000 K 5 bar battery car, you're going to get a couple of $3,000 CCS credits. You're going to plate it into your mate's name. You're going to get $3,500 rebate. What have you suddenly got? A free car. And it's been going on. Look at the classifieds on Trade Me. All the people selling miraculously plated yesterday Leafs, and that's exactly what they've done. And it's carbon harvesting, and you can argue whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, but the system allowed that to happen. So we might see a drop-off in those vehicles coming into the market. And apart from that, I can't have much difference to the the numbers, but it might affect the pricing. What we have noticed already is that the Japanese agents are already scouring for and offering the vehicles that we were previously struggling to access in terms of pricing. So the things like the bigger Serenas and People Movers and the bigger vehicles that had a pretty hefty car whack on top are starting to come back. We might see a bit of a return in the legacy market. Don't forget, it doesn't affect CCS values, but it may affect how the consumer views the pricing of that car.
Yeah. It's interesting to see what happens, and I'm sure, maybe there's been some interesting movement in values at auction in Japan.
Yeah.
I suspect that all the product managers around the country they wouldn't be that surprised, but they know this was coming. They'll be certainly reviewing their numbers for next year, seeing what can be changed at head office level. We'll see. I'm going to be interested to see where Tesla prices go, because there was New Zealand has, I think, to this day, one of the cheapest Model Ys in the world because of the clean car discount. I'll be interested to see if they can maintain their vehicle down at that level, because the Model 3 has gone up, but they maintain that Model Y at that low level. So it'll be interesting to see if that stays there. I think the interesting thing, I think a lot of stuff will still sell. I think Tesla might be the one that suffers in the new car industry. And I say that because a lot of, we're very aware that a lot of people who never bought a new car before or aren't during the new car buyers have bought Teslas because they love the algorithm and they got that chunk of money and, finance the whole rest of it. We've seen issues blowing over from that. So I think maybe some of those Tesla sales might disappear, and it'll be more the people that could actually afford them without it actually doing. I think the likes of MG and BYD will still tick along pretty darn well because they're doing a lot of fleet business, and that fleet business is not going to go away. It's going to bring a little bit forward, and we've had aware of that from speaking lately. There's definitely going to shift a few of those units before the end of the year from a fleet perspective. But those fleets are still going to buy those cars next year.
Do you know what is one of the disadvantages Tesla has? One of the reasons why I think, for example, MG and BYD and the new entrants like the Motor coming in next year, why they do well, they offer a dealership experience. And it's one thing that Tesla has been found lacking on, at least in public perception, is if you're a fanboy, Tesla's fine because you bought into the experience of buying the car. But again, my driving the MG4. Everyday people still want to go to a dealership and talk to dealership people and kick the tires and look at the color charts and decide what features they like and take it for a test drive and take it for another test drive. And that's what those dealerships bring to the table, is they bring an ordinary person dealership experience that Tesla, for the most part, has not.
You can test drive in New Zealand now.
Yeah, but it's not the same. You don't have a BYD store on the corner with all the features that a dealership has, and people still like that. People still want that experience when they're selecting.
Yeah, I think that's an old view of Tesla. They've essentially got two dealerships in Auckland. They've got one at Christchurch. So it is there, but I get what you're saying. To be honest, the biggest reason I bought a Chinese over a Tesla, warranty. 6-year warranty over a 3-year warranty. And as much as I believe in electric vehicle technology, I'm a nervous buyer, and a warranty is a big part of the buying process to me.
So more for us in the used industry, and which is why I look at these things so closely. And you don't necessarily, as I'm really concerned about what the thing's going to be like in 6 or 7 years' time, because in that time, or 5 years, I'm going to get it as a dealer, and I don't have backup of warranty anymore. So I've got to look at it with a very cynical eye and say, what is this going to cost me in the preparation, detail, and reconditioning cost factor, parts, servicing, like in terms of long-term reliability. And I keep banging on about that, but that's one of the primary things the used industry looks at downstream. But it also can affect the value of the vehicle, at least the value perception of a product, if you see that the resale is poor as a result of the trade not wishing to pick it back up again. And we've seen that with brands across all the years. We know which ones we're talking about, have horrific residual values 3, 4, 5 years on the track because people are concerned about what it's going to cost once it's out of warranty.
Yeah. You mentioned refurb there. Can I tell everyone a hilarious story related to refurb?
Oh, go on.
So I walked out to our car this week, our BYD in the driveway, and noticed 2 big, what I thought were gouges in the paint on the passenger door, And we just moved to our garage, pretty full of stuff. Oh no, the wife's bumped into something in there, or something's fallen
It's
off.
all the wife done it, right?
Why didn't she tell me? Yeah, spoke to her, like things happen. She's like, I just can't recall anything happening. I hadn't even seen it. And I was like, yeah, look, this was, I kind of resolved myself to it. I was very ready to call you to get a number for a good paint touch-up guy, and left it at that. Went to Goucher's Pass. The wife finally went out and had a look at it, and she came walking over to me. I was outside with her daughter, and she goes, "Those gouges are gone." I'm like, "What?" Because I'd really gotten in there, rubbed them, and thought, "This is definitely a gouge. This is like gone, like multiple layers of paint. It's gone." And she says, "I thought it was just something stuck on there."
Still fixing cars.
And she managed to put up the difference between her and me, and she's got longer fingernails.
Stephen King wrote quite a good book about a car, didn't he, Richard?
Yes.
Christine.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Self-fixing car.
Yeah. So I spent multiple days as a man dreaming the thought of damage to my car and how I was going to fix it, only to learn of probably some boot crap too.
I curbed a rim in the Mustang a couple of weeks ago. I curbed the rim, and you know what? I cried. I just got out of the car and sat on the footpath and cried. I know it's a big thing.
We curbed a wheel in the BYD the other day, just slightly. We were pulling up to a hotel for my birthday, have a night off, and pulled up outside the hotel to park. And the wife was saying, "Look, the camera isn't working. For some reason, the front camera had gone blank." And as she did that, talking about how it's blank and an issue hitting the curb, she had the curb. So not her fault; it's the camera's fault.
Anyway,
yeah, I curbed a couple of. I curbed a couple of wheels on my rotations when I was at the CEO. One of them, I think, was the Honda, the fast car. It was pouring down with rain. Yeah, it was pouring down with rain. I pulled over to park outside the local Foursquare, and then I heard this bump, and I thought, what the heck is that? And I got out, and there was a brick in the gutter, which I couldn't see in the rain. Made a mess of the wheel. Yeah.
Anyway, look, moving a little bit further into clean car, we'll move on from the actual announcement. The clarity was the key word for VIA. The MIA has been in pretty much back-to-back meetings since then, so we haven't had a chance to get any comment out of them yet. But Greg Epps, the CEO of VIA, says that this is exactly what they've been looking for, and we've been asking for since the election, confirmation that the end date was the 31st. He welcomed how detailed the information provided by the NZTA was. An announcement included confirmation of hardline times and dates at various stages of the end. These are the sort of technical parts that we need. He said, they acknowledge the fact that there's been no exemption for shipping or compliance. To the speed with which they are trying to put things through, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to accept it. We can push back the legislation as it is under urgency right now, and it is going through. I think we need to just focus on getting what they have said done. And they're looking forward now to being part of the minister's suggested review of the clean car standard, which I think some were discussing as part of the passing of the regulation of Parliament, as potentially should come forward a little bit to give another lever there somewhere. I feel like the government might have more other things to deal with in the short term than dealing with that. If you did read it and you want to have a look, I did sit there for quite some time and follow the passage of the regulation through Parliament yesterday.
Oh, you go, you.
Yeah. Parliament TV. Okay. It was an interesting debate. I wish Simon would just calm down a little bit. I think Simeon, you could see, is under a load and getting stuff through. I think he would have liked more polish in what he was doing, but he got there in the end and was doing pretty well. Simon Court who's the ex-transport spokesperson who was there working on this in partnership. Are you still there, David, or are you... he's there, he's alive.
Watching Parliament TV.
No, I'm just getting a few calls from news outlets who think I'm still the CEO. I'm just sort of letting them know who has taken over from me.
Might be some top tips coming your way. Just pretend you still are.
Yeah. And that's it. Well, they'll be calling about it going through Parliament last night. We're all a bit slow on it, to be honest. The mainstream media and other outlets read after us going out in the announcement. Simon Court, very vitriolic, and I think sometimes he needs to double check his details we're doing or what he's doing. Interestingly, both National and ACT called out this new figure that they were, and that was that $150 million of the money had been paid on vehicles priced between $70,000 to $80,000, which is really starting to dissect this a little bit. And I question how they keep categorizing a $70,000 vehicle as extremely expensive.
It's politics, Richard, if you haven't learnt that already.
I know.
Politics.
It seems very...
It doesn't have to suit us.
It seems very out of touch. Would you consider a Ford Ranger a very expensive vehicle in New Zealand?
We see took the very expensive and the Ford Ranger and put it together. No one ever puts those two words together.
Exactly.
Those are mutually exclusive phrases. You just want the Ford Ranger. You want an expensive car. Don't put them together. It's just politics.
And what's an XLT with a canopy and a few niceties on board?
I don't know. I've
$70-something thousand.
If you're watching the Simon, we wouldn't say no to a nice sea light Ranger in the driveway. Just
The interesting thing, Richard, prices for new vehicles. If you look at their base prices and you look at the base price for utes, the average price for a ute before you start adding things on is around about $60,000. And we would call that a moderately priced car. I think vehicles that cost more than $80,000 have always in the past been considered to be getting up to more of the luxury end. The problem is that's changed now, and I think and with the electrification or the infiltration of low emission vehicles that have got more pricey tech, the average price of vehicles will be jumping about $20,000 to $30,000. So we're starting to see anything up to $100,000 is going to be a moderately priced car. Expensive vehicles will be over $100K. It's just taking a long time for people to accept that $70,000 to $100,000 is an average price for a moderately priced, well-spec'd vehicle. It's inflation that's been caused by a range of things, but mostly because of tech.
And it's just not just the mainstream. It's the mainstream ones that are part of it. I was speaking about the departure of the Giltrap Group from Nissan in Central Auckland recently, and one of the discussion points around that was half the reason that Nissan was their value brand. It was their offering in those lower rungs. And they pointed out that there's pretty much nothing in the Nissan range that they could sell now for under $60,000. And that's why having Nissan was great, they swapped out Nissan for MG because they needed something that they could park people in that lower space into, essentially.
Without relitigating the subject over and over again, because I know we're talking a lot about today, do you think we're going to see a creep up in price of the existing, particularly utes, a creep upwards? Because, let's face it, we know the market will pay. Clean car with the extra $6,000-$7,000. Are we going to see some sneaky creep up in pricing, in retail pricing, without a clean car fee?
Well, I think it's not so much that. I think in some cases they're going to have to, because to be quite blunt, no matter what we think, even though I think they will still continue at a reasonable rate, the volume of electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids, when it's a little slow, but it'll stall in regards to market growth for the next little period. And they have, for many brands, been balancing out the higher emitting vehicles. So
and the CCS.
So the balance of their CCS account is going to start creeping the other way a little bit.
The pricing of new vehicles is a little bit different from used, and there are a lot of parameters that go into it. When before COVID, and there were large volumes of supplies of vehicles in the country and stocking levels were high, distributors could feel relatively comfortable discounting the vehicles or giving pricing it more strategically because they needed to move stock over. what I noticed in the new vehicle market is that once COVID came in and the supply chains got disrupted, and then we started to see shortages because of the microchip, etc. That level of discounting largely disappeared out of the market because there were wait lists and really long wait lists for really popular models. So discounting just went out the window. So it's not that we will see pricing creep up, it's the level of discounting that is either in or not in the market as it operates. A lot of that depends on supply chains, wait lists, and demand curves. As we head into and continue to head into really tough economic times, we might start to see the discretionary spending tighten even further. We have seen it tighten, and I think the new vehicle market hasn't yet really faced the headwinds of a poor performing economy, and that could all change fairly quickly. So it's going to be a really interesting period.
Yeah, I go to a few car launches, and interestingly, think the strategies of a lot of these new car brands have changed. They used to always be the volume kind of attitude, and I think now they're more looking at profitability and brand experience. I think the discounting is going, and I think it's becoming more about how much can we make out of the cars that we can get, and it's an interesting shift. Now, let's go to our very much second biggest story of the week, and again, another one which was pretty much exclusive initially to AutoTalk, but might remain exclusive to AutoTalk, and that is Sir Colin Giltrap is recovering from a serious fall. Giltrap Group founder and industry leader Colin Giltrap has suffered a serious fall and is now recovering at a hospital in London. The 83-year-old businessman suffered broken ribs in the fall, is now said to be recovering. AutoTalk understands his son Richard, chairman of European Motor Distributors, has travelled to the United Kingdom to assist Sir Colin and his wife, Lady Jennifer, and son Michael is heading there shortly. The pair have long split their time between New Zealand and the UK. And a statement through the Giltrap Group spokesperson Sean Summerfield, the family thank well wishes for their messages. Sir Colin is recovering after a fall, left him with broken ribs. He is now looking forward to spending Christmas with his family in London. The Giltrap family are grateful for the many kind messages Colin has received, and that one has been very popular online, very popular on LinkedIn as well. Again, further well wishes for Sir Colin through on that, and we hope he is comfortable and working well. Someone within the group suggested he was watching a lot of rugby in hospital. So
automotive royalty.
Yes, automotive royalty. Hopefully he's actually taking a little bit of time because I think he's 83 now, and he stepped down as the chairman earlier this year of the company. I still believe he's a pretty active worker, and I certainly seen him once or twice around the offices in Auckland. Hopefully he's on the mend.
And I heard just recently in the motorcycle side of things that Ian Beckhouse sadly passed away recently. So it's always a sad loss when the people who've been in the industry all of their life get hurt or pass on.
And another family there too. I mean, his daughter, I believe, is still essentially running the family business. I believe they're still.
Yeah, Lee and son Michael. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Are they still distributing bikes, or are they?
Yeah. They've got a range of brands that they play with quite well.
Yeah. Right. Now, let's go on a little bit further. The cover story from AutoTalk. Atego Group fully committed to BYD. So, Neville Crichton was in the country and here with colleagues from BYD for the launch of the Seal, which is now underway. So, we have a great photo there of Managing Director of BYD Asia Pacific, Li Zhilang. And other BYD executives, they were here. Atego are really doubling down on this brand in this market. They've gone from, I guess, some fairly niche brands with, didn't actually put that story up, I bet, with Jeep and Fiat, a few of those kind of things. They've dabbled in some other stuff in the past, as people well aware. Neville's I guess, gig for several years has kind of been, particularly in Australia, launching fledgling brands or interesting brands and handing them over eventually. But this one, they certainly seem to be holding the volume on. They're just saying how good it is that. They have just opened, and again, we cover this in the magazine, a new BYD showroom alongside the Jeep showroom in Wairau Park.
We talked about that.
Yeah. And I've since then chatted to the dealer principal, Matthew Wells, of that group. And one of his points was that having a dealership that was developed by Tico under Neville's hand, as Neville is, he's a property developer, is amazing. He says it's the best dealership, the flashiest dealership they've ever had the chance to operate, because he just says that Tico will just really know how to build a dealership. And interesting to get that feedback. And again, another legend of the industry that's still trucking on and busy working it. Neville would be not that far behind Mr. Giltrap in age, I imagine. And he's been sailing in Auckland too this week, so that's good that he's enjoy that while he's here. Another dealership development, Auckland City Toyota Super Site officially opened. The Auckland City Toyota Super Site in Wellington was officially opened on December 12, with proceedings including a karakia and a blessing of the store's premises led by local iwi Ngāti Pao. TFS Ambassador Mike McRoberts was the Master of Ceremonies, and other dignitaries included Valerie Adams, Michelle Dickinson, David Leety, Olivia McTaggart, I'm not sure who it is, and Olympian Zoe Hobbs. Armstrong's Chief Executive Troy Kennedy and the new Chief Executive of Auckland City Toyota David Fox welcomed guests to the event, and New Zealand Chief Executive Neeraj Lala congratulated Armstrong's Executive Director Rick Armstrong on the opening of the country's first Toyota Super Site. I'm not sure what that means. Dave Dobbin also played. He turned up at various Toyota events.
I saw he played the whole music that everyone gets sick of listening on every single damn public service site in New Zealand. It's like loyal. You just find something else for our music. Like choose something else for the opening of your super site, surely. But there you are.
I have a lovely story about Dave Dobbin at the Twitter event, because he's been a very good ambassador for them for a very long time. We were at Taupo Racetrack for the launch of the Toyota 86, and Dave Dobbin goes and does a couple of laps, gets near the end, they put flags out to end. And Dave goes and pulls up in the middle of the home straight, chucks a Yui, and turns into the pits. And the manager of the Toyota facility just ran out and quite ropeable in that situation. And luckily, I was anyone else on track at the time. But you don't, Mr. Dobb, you don't turn around on a racetrack. It goes in one direction. Interesting site. That one, of course, that's the old Fleet Partners site.
Yeah, that's a checkered history, that site, in terms of big store site.
Yeah.
And
probably
one of the few actually in Auckland that has the capacity to cope with a visit that size.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. It's almost too big, I think. I know they've built on that site now the Armstrong's head office as well. But you go there and you could probably be a long time at the bottom of the yard before someone notices you there. But hopefully, I think now that it's officially open as a super site, it'll be a lot more lively.
Destination dealership.
Yes, and I hope they deal with the complaint I've made to a couple of people before. Every time I go there, there's Hiluxes parked on the EV charger. Can't do that.
That's deliberate. They saw you coming.
I have a question about super sites. Are they a good idea in a New Zealand context? Is it possible to have a car yard that is too big?
I think you've got to look in the context of Auckland. They have, there's a Toyota dealership out here. There's a Toyota dealership in Manukau. There's a Toyota dealership in Lane. They're all pretty small, except maybe the Manukau airport site. They don't have a huge amount of space for logistics. They don't have a huge amount of space for used cars. I also understand that maybe the days are numbered on the Auckland City Toyota Lynn site. And so essentially what the super site is really a big holding tank, I think, for a lot of stock, particularly used stock. There are hundreds of used cars out there. And the theory being, of course, you've got your closer to retail sites, and then you hold a lot of that stuff at that more, what do you call it, brownfields, more, a little bit out of the way, a little bit less expensive real estate.
Well, it didn't used to be. That was the heart of Moy's territory back in the day. That was sort of the whole Panmure destination, the Panmure roundabout. Remember all the dealerships around the roundabout there? You had Moy's at the top of the hill there. It was a real destination point, but it's sort of slipped away a little bit now. So you actually want to go. You're going to want to go there. You can have to make the journey there, rather than just as a car shopping experience in general.
I suspect that they'll deal with a lot of their fleet delivery through there, and a lot of fleet business through there, and that used car business. So you'll go into Auckland City Twitter and Grey Lynn, and you'll say you want this, this, and this, and they'll go, well, we've got something like that at our super site, and they'll make an appointment for you out there.
And rental defleeting.
Yes, yeah, potentially.
Given the numbers,
potentially. Right. Just another couple of little ones. That one first. That one's in my category of Weldar. Twitter remains the most searched car brand in New Zealand.
Boy, who wrote that? Spent all night researching.
In the 6th report from Compare the Market, Twitter has maintained its position as the most searched car brand in New Zealand for the 6th consecutive year. Tesla was the nation's second favourite brand. Well, there's a that's a little bit out of step. Followed by Mazda in third. Twitter also took the global throne as the most popular brand around the world, with Tesla making the podium for the first time in the report's history. That is Weldar, but always interesting to know that people really want Toyota.
It was a slow news story at that organisation. Slow news story week.
The interesting bit, sorry, Richard, in that is not who was first and second. That was relatively predictable. What was interesting for me is that Mazda came in third as the most searched. I was really surprised by that.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. Have they gone through quite a product change this year? Maybe that has something to do with that. Maybe it's just lots of people looking for old rotaries.
Looking for the Excella turnaround. Looking at every solar mum in West Auckland wants an Excella hatchback, right?
Well, if you look at the used car stats at the moment, I think Mazda's on the up and Nissan's on the down. The last couple of months.
Oh, yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
A nice one. 5th consecutive test drive for a difference fundraiser begins. MG New Zealand's 19 strong national dealer network have begun participating in its 5th consecutive test drive for a difference fundraiser for the New Zealand Red Cross. For every test drive undertaken during December 11/31, MG New Zealand will donate $10 to charity, capped at a maximum of $10,000. So if you're feeling charitable, even if you work at another dealership, go down to your local MG dealership and take a car for a drive. Maybe an MG4. Great way to make a Christmas donation without doing anything. Amoda JQ New Zealand aiming for 3% market share in 2024. So we had the brand launch this week for Amoda /JQ. They're two brands. What you would have previously known as Cherry, and they've done a bit of badge swap out on that. Amoda JQ country manager Sheldon Humphreys has told Motoring Media that the new Chinese entrant is aiming for a 3% share of the market in 2024. Humphreys says the brand will launch with the Amoda C5 SUV with a 1.5 litre and 1.6 litre ICE powertrain in addition to the battery electric Amoda E5 in the first quarter of 2024. He says the local distribution team is growing and expects to have 40 staff members on the board. 12 dealers have been confirmed so far, and more are being sought in the South Island. The C5 and E5 will be followed in 2024 by the Amoda C9 with both ICE and PHEV powertrains. The JQ J7 SUV will also launch with the same setup. And they go on and on and on. Lots of cars coming, lots of models coming from that brand.
Pricing, I notice, hasn't been discussed, but are we seeing this as maybe excluding the EV end of the market? Are we seeing this as a budget to mid-range?
Yes. Well, Amoda, yes. JQ, I think, will be a little bit further up market. I think the J7 is like their kind of take on an Audi Q7, but it'll be priced probably closer to, probably under a Highlander, I'd suggest. They're suggesting the C5, the first SUV to launch with a 1.5 turbo, will be launched just north of the MG ZS. I'm not sure if they'll be in the MG ZS non-turbo or turbo. They are different in pricing. But it looks like potentially a lot more car for the money. Interestingly, this brand has gone back and forth on what they were going to launch here because they kind of held back because of the clean car standard. Some of the early stuff, the early ICE stuff, isn't the best on CO2. and I think they may have just held back a bit on that. Now that they kind of clear to go, now they know what's going on, and they've got a lot more ICE and EV, PHEV options set to go, and of course that E5 SUV. So another small to medium Chinese electric SUV on the run, coming to a dealership near you. Many dealerships. They've got a lot of dealerships already.
Well, it was 11 last week and it's 12 today.
Yeah,
so
and
that just goes to show how quickly things are moving.
Yes, and that's just the North Island. They've barely announced any in the South Island yet. So, yeah, interesting to see, though. Again, in Auckland, the majority of the dealerships in Auckland are one brand, and I suspect that they will centralise some of their stuff with that. Last story of the day, Avanti Finance completes $200 million of auto loan asset-backed securities. Avanti Finance has completed its inaugural New Zealand auto loan asset-backed securities issuance of $200 million. The issuance is on the back of a similar deal in Australia in August, with the insurance securitizing loans. They're too technical to read. Basically, they've managed to get some money. With car finance actually on the boom moment because no one wants to borrow on their mortgage anymore, that's probably a fairly good investment from whoever has gone and done that. So, that's the news for this week. Anyone got anything you plan for the weekend?
Well, I was going to say, before we go into that, and just say that the other little bit of news, well, I don't think it's news, but I think this is worth pointing out, that my discussions around the industry is it's been a particularly poor December. It's been a flatline month in the industry. And so while we're sitting here seeing up all the things going forward and all the good news, let's just reflect on the fact that I think for the trade in general, December's been a really, really been a tough month. It's been a shitty month, actually. And it would appear that whether we're technically now in a recession again or we're going to be in a recession, I see the figures released yesterday, day before yesterday, show not a particularly happy picture going forward. I think the motor vehicle industry is feeling it. And we tend to be the canaries in the mine. So people's smaller discretionary spending, whether it's, cafes, restaurants, the cup of coffee, the Christmas presents, that's the last to go. But the first thing when they're feeling the pressure are the big, grunty capital purchases. And we're just not seeing people getting into the car market as they were 6 months ago or a year ago. It's not a great end to the end of the year. I can't speak for new, and we know there's different mechanisms behind why new vehicles sell. But in the sector, I think most dealers are doing it pretty tough. Yeah. And there's also logistical that's been faced at the end of the year with Clean Car coming up around compliance, around the lack of inspectorate. Everyone's facing a lot of pressure. So can I just say, if you're in the industry and you're sitting there thinking, it's nice talking about new models, but I'm trying to pay the bills here, it is tough. People, we know it's tough. I think we're all as a trade experiencing that, and we're being squeezed on all these different directions. So we're together, but be aware that I don't think it's going to be a particularly great December or January in terms of profitability.
Yeah, that's not one.
And I'm hearing in the new vehicle sector, it's tough out there. And the only bright spot, I guess, is the removal of the Clean Car discount.
Yep. I think we've said this before. I think in case of emergency, pull ripcord, sell utes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to buy a couple now.
Yeah. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week for the Christmas edition.
Yes.
Hopefully with booze.
Christmas drinking session
Of the AutoTalk weekly wrap station. Anyway, goodbye.